All right. Welcome in everybody to the Made New project. This is our first virtual guest and we've already went through some serious IT issues together. So I'm glad I had Tim Martin here. Tim's my friend. He's also a podcast host of the Warriors Way podcast. So you guys make sure you check that out, give it a follow. I've been a guest on there before and multiple other super inspiring people. So it was great to have Tim here and we worked through it together. And he doesn't even use the same platform as me, but he's got a little bit more knowledge than I do on this stuff, and we got through it together. So, like I said, without further ado, the guest today is Mr. Tim Martin. I met him at the Mid-State Mile just last year, really, and I think we started following each other right before then, and then met in person there. And Tim had some goals out there that I'm sure he'll go through that he didn't really meet last year, but made a huge change in his life over the course of the last really 365 days or so. That's resulted in some amazing things. So, Tim, I would just like you to introduce who you are and maybe how you got into running and what your goals were last year, and then what you're looking for in this next season of yours.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on, Dylan. I'm really excited that you got your podcast started. It's been great to listen to. I'm a podcast junkie, so having another one in that rotation that's good, solid, faith-filled, fun is great to have, in my ears. So thank you for having me on. And yeah, we went through some hurdles, but I feel like this is just a learning experience to better prepare us for the next one. And I don't use the same platform, but I've been very interested in this platform. So this helps me, kind of cross some T's too. But my name's Tim, like Dylan said, and I come from a background like probably a lot of us do that get into ultra running, which is I grew up playing sports in high school. Um, I hated anything to do with running. I would do everything I could to get out of it and find ways to not run. That was the form of punishment. So running was like a synonym with punishment in growing up. And in my later years, I think I was about 26 or 27 when I signed up for my first 5K, and it was really just to try to get in shape and lose some weight. And did the Couch to 5K program, and did a few of those. And after my first 5K, I remember I took like a week off of running because I needed to give myself some, a rest after such a brutal training block. And I got into a little bit further distance running with the Ragnar. So maybe you've heard of those. They're like these relay races. They're a point-to-point relay race. You get a team of people. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't done one, you should definitely look it up because they're a really good time. But that kind of got me into, there's three separate runs over the course of like a 24-hour period. So you run 3 to 5 miles, you get in a van. About 6 or 7 hours later, you do it again, and you do that 3 times. So that was like my next step into a little bit further endurance running. And then I signed up for a half marathon in 2019, and it was for the spring of 2020. That got canceled because of COVID. It got canceled again in 2021 because of COVID. But during these Ragnars that kept going on, we were raising money for charity. So it was me and a group of people from work. We just built one of these teams, and to make it mean something a little bit more, we chose a charity to raise some money with. And the fall of 2021, that charity reached out to me and one other person and asked us to run the New York City Marathon. So it was 2021, height of COVID. Nobody wanted to go to New York City because of it. And my friend was training for a marathon, so he was already ready for it. I had only ran 6 miles. That was my longest run ever. And 6 weeks to train for the New York City Marathon. He's like, we got to do this. It's a once in a lifetime thing. I can't say no to really anyone when it comes to this stuff. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. So 6 week training block, ran my first marathon, and it was awful. I hit the wall at like probably mile 14, and it was just this huge suffer fest for the whole second half of it. But that was the first time I've ever been in that kind of, the pain cave. I didn't even know what it was called at that time, but it was this spot in my mind where things were really, really bad. I couldn't distract myself with anything externally. I was forced to face where I was in my pain right there, but I was also forced to like face some things that I had kind of like suppressed for quite a while. And so when I finished that marathon, my buddy's like, "Yep, that was my bucket list item. I'm done. I'm never doing another one." And I was like, "Well, there's only five more of those, and you do all the world majors. I kind of want to do that again." And so I signed up for Chicago the next year. Since then, I've done four marathons. But in training for those, uh, the app Strava introduced me to our mutual friend, Doug Moore. He took my local legend status from me one day. I'm still pretty bitter about it. Um, so I started following him. I'm like, Doug Moore, who's this guy? And he was training for, I want to say it was Georgia Jewel or the Georgia Death Race, one of those two. But I quickly learned he was running way different than I was. We were not on the same level. And we'd pass each other in the mornings. So we'd pass each other with headlamps on and not know it was each other. And then we'd see our Strava segments later and be like, oh, I thought that was you. And then one day, randomly, I was running in the afternoon, which I really never do. And this guy's coming towards me, takes his headphones out, and he's like, "Are you Tim?" I'm like, "Are you Doug?" And he's like, "Are we gonna run?" It was like that scene from like Step Brothers, like, "Did we just become best friends?" And we ran together, and Doug is a man of faith, and that's something that I'm very high on too. But it was fun to have somebody to run with that our conversations were deep conversations, and I got in the trails with him while he was training for that stuff, and it was something where, road running's hard enough. There's no way I'm doing this in the trails. Like, not interested. Don't even talk me into it. This is not something that I'm going to agree to. And then, fast forward, here we are. But Mid-State Mile, Doug, hey, you need to come do this. I saw the documentary like we all have, and I'm like, yeah, I would love to do that. There's a lot of doubt and fear in me, but I kind of gravitate towards those things that bring those uncomfortable feelings up. So, yeah, last spring was the first trail running I've really ever done, was at the Mid-State Mile. So going through that, I had much higher expectations for myself. That we say it all the time, that hill humbles people for sure. And I
Mhm.
got humbled hard. So, but it was like, that feeling I had at that marathon, like that sucked and I want more of that. So I've kind of been addicted to it since.
Yeah, I didn't know most of that story at all. So like super cool to hear. And it's just insane to think like you did multiple couch to 5K train ups. And it's funny how like it's so big of a thing in that time frame. And you look at it now and it's like it reminds me of the army. Like when you go to basic training, it's the biggest moment of your life. And then when you're at 5 years in, it's like basic training didn't even happen almost. It's like that. I can't believe I was worried about that. And that's kind of what that feels like with stuff like that. And you have a similar marathon story to me. My first one, I thought I could just grit it out essentially. And then you hit a wall and you find a new pain, and that's what you were kind of expressing, something that you hadn't put yourself through before. And although it was terrible, it's what fed my addiction, and it's what sounds like it fed your addiction to find more, which is, it seems like everything that our body tells us to go. Yeah, maybe it's just certain people though. I was trying to think of this because certain people, if you find that kind of pain, they'll just never go back to it. Kind of like your buddy, right? He's like, I'm done with this. And then there's other types of people that lean into it, like myself or yourself, and so many other people that we know. It's almost normal, but I don't think it is. And I relate this to plants, and this is going to sound weird, Tim, but I was in an agriculture course, and they explained cactus and how they're called, like extremophytes is the type of plant they are, and they feed off of stress. Like they have to have stress. Like if you give them the right amounts of water and stuff, they can't thrive. They have to be dehydrated and in terrible growing conditions for them to release their actual potential. And so I think that humans are a lot like that, where some of them need all the nutrients and and they need the good environments, and some of the rest of us, we need a little bit of pain and trauma and a little bit of a kick in the rear to get us to actually become our true versions of ourselves. So I always kind of revolve back to that. But yeah, the that first marathon, it's so terrible. It's and it's so funny. We look at 26 miles now, and it's a different thing. Man, yeah, I just wanted to ask. So going from road to trail, I'm getting people to do that all the time. And what do you think is so different about the trail than the road? And let's go with what's harder about it, because I know the first time anybody runs trail, it's much, much harder than they ever thought it could be. And then the pros and cons and like which side you lean towards.
Yeah, I think the hard part about it is honestly like the expectations you have of your fitness and what you can actually do on the trails. So it's like on the roads, I'm not a fast runner by any means, any stretch of the imagination. But, on the road, if I'm running a 10-minute mile, we'll just use for simple math. I know the trails are going to be difficult. I know if I go out and run a hilly road course, it's going to be a little bit longer. But, the first several times I'd go out with Doug and he'd be like, okay, what pace do you want to run at? I'm like, I don't know, an 11.5 minute mile or so. And I am like redlining. My heart rate's through the roof. I can't talk, and he's just behind me carrying on a full conversation. And it gets really discouraging because it's like, man, I can run a 10-minute mile. I'm struggling to run a 11, 12-minute mile here. Like, what, I must be out of shape, or I must not be cut out for this. But in that same aspect, you're running the whole time because that's what you're used to doing when you're running 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, even marathons. You're used to constant movement. You're used, like, find your pace, hit your pace, negative splits. Like, that's the gospel of road running, right? So it's like you get into trails and it's like, you might have, your third or fourth mile might be your fastest mile, and then you might get met by your longest mile, and then it's gonna go up and it's gonna go down, and when you have those unrealistic, maybe just unknowing expectations about what is trail running, it's easy to get discouraged. And once you get discouraged at something, a lot of people, like you talked about, like when it's discouraging and it's hard to do and you're not good at it, it's really weird for people to want to keep doing it. So like for me, I started reading and listening to a lot of books on trail running. I started following a lot of people in the trail running community, just to understand this culture more. Because obviously there was something that I love being out in nature. I love the exploring. I love backpacking and hiking. And this was just a way to do it faster. Like I wanted to love it, but it didn't start that way. It started as something when Doug would call me, I would like, you know, there would be a sick feeling in my stomach because I know he wants me to go out and run a trail with him. Now I'm the one calling him like, hey, when are you running? I'll come meet you. But I think it's just changing some expectations. Um, Trail running has been way more laid back for me. And road running, it's very strict schedule when I'm training for a race. Some of these bigger races I've been training for recently have been a little bit more strict on the trail schedule, but it's still like I'm getting out and I'm surrounding myself in the woods. Like that's something I would do if I wasn't training for a race anyway. So, I just enjoy that way more than going up to the sidewalk and running 5 miles in one direction and 5 miles back. I call that my sick version of a treadmill. It's like you are running outside, but it's still like you're only seeing one thing, and that's the crack in the pavement in front of you. Um, so yeah, I think that can kind of lead to it being a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I agree. And what you're saying with like the road running and trail running, like, and I know you'll agree with this, but you're seeing God's creation more when you're out in nature as well. I know that a lot of the time, like I'm finding myself in awe of like a small creek, or a tree formation or a group of deer or something like that. And so I really enjoy seeing things that you don't find in your everyday life are out on the trail. Like that's happening. There's a whole nother ecosystem growing out there. And like we are a portion of God's creation. And then there's all of that we don't see most of the time. And trail running, for me, it gives me that, and it gives me a gratefulness. It makes me feel small. And I like feeling small, that because life can seem big and these issues that I think I have can seem so much bigger than they are. And the trail makes me realize they aren't big at all, and that I'm just like super grateful for. So I just know you probably resonated, with that feeling as well.
Yeah, it's funny. So one of the things that made that New York Marathon so difficult was I had a running playlist that part of my fundraiser was if you don't for every $10 you donated, you got to pick a song to put on my playlist. So there were some that I loved and some that were terrible, but I left it up to people to pick. And my goal was I'm running with my buddy, but there's going to be a time where I'm going to need some extra motivation. So I'm going to put my headphones in and I'm going to listen to this playlist and I'm going to think about all the people who supported me, and that's going to get me through. And um, when I needed it, my Bluetooth wouldn't connect. The with all the buildings, the signal was bad, and nothing was streaming. But I was wasting all this energy trying to make it happen. And it's like I went from this is bad to this is terrible in like a quarter mile. And from that point on, I'm like, I'm never going to count on headphones again. They failed me. I do not want to be at a place where I'm relying on something else that will fail me. Like I'm going to rely on my training only. So I started running without headphones. And like to your point, you start hearing the birds chirping, you start hearing the, squirrels and the deer, and you start hearing nature everywhere. Even when, I run on a paved trail as well, but it goes kind of through some woods and some wetlands. And, um, I attribute those two differences to like running in a city. Like I might want to have my headphones on so I'm not hearing horns, honking and the cars driving and all that. But when I get in the woods, I want it to be quiet. I want to just hear what God's doing around me. And to your point, yeah, it makes like, the Bible talks about how God will take care of, the sparrows. Like I know he's going to take care of me. And when I see a cardinal fly through or I see a deer run through, I'm like, they are being taken care of. And how much more important am I to God than the animals? Like my problems are going to be okay, and it's a chance to just like disconnect, feel small, and then I run most of the time in the morning, and I go to work, and it's like yeah, the problems that come up every day, sure they're inconvenient, but they're nothing compared to what they could be, and we are blessed.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I don't know if I told you the story, but I was at the Love It 100 and I don't know, maybe 30 miles in, and somebody asked me, what I listened to during the race. And I told him, "Oh, like I don't listen to music during races." And the guy was kind of blown away. And I'm like, "Well, once I got sober, and this like alcohol was something that I was using to get through things, like an external agent. So then I just wanted to eliminate anything that if it wasn't there, I wouldn't be able to get through the thing. Exactly what you just spoke about, where like this thing could fail me at some point or not be there when I need it. But what I know will be there is one, myself, and two, the Lord, and like those things are always going to be there no matter what. You call for it, he'll be there, God will provide. And so I know that when I race, I ran the whole Cocodona, and I wore my headphones for 2 hours to get through. Like I couldn't stay awake, and I was alone, and I listened to Andy Stump's book. Like I wasn't even listening to music, I was listening to an audio book. And that was the only time. And in 94 hours, because I just want to
Yeah.
be in part of the environment as well and the experience. And then also like what you're saying, it scares me to think that I could get to a point where I need something and I've thought that I'm going to use it and then it's not there. Like exactly the exact scenario that you spoke about is the thing that I fear the most, And so I just never wanted to be in that situation.
Well, that and you're not one of the people that show up to mid-state like, what? We can't use headphones? Like, what the heck? It's like, yeah,
Well, that was
I'm
my first
transit.
ultra, so mid-state, yeah, maybe mid-state kind of just taught me that you're supposed to go out there and talk to people and everything else,
Yeah.
and not listen to anything else besides other people in the course. And yeah, yeah, bringing it to mid-state. I mean, you talk about trail running, and then one of your first trail experiences is arguably one of the hardest miles there are in the country. I mean, I'm sure anybody could find one, but for a loop, a figure eight loop, it's got to be one of the hardest, if not the hardest. So one, what drew you to it, and then two, what did it do for you and to you?
Yeah, so about 8 months before mid-state, we started our Warriors Way chapter up here in Michigan, and our Warriors Way. We meet every Saturday morning um, in Michigan, outdoors. So through the good weather, through the bad weather. And we work out for about 45 minutes, have a devotion, and then grab some coffee. And the purpose is to do hard things together as a group of men. And, those hard things help help us become better versions of ourselves for God, for our family, and for our community. So Doug was a huge inspiration and a huge encouragement in starting that group. He's training for the Mid-State Mile. We have a hill that we kind of created up here in the woods. Doug and Larry, if some of you guys listening know Larry, but Doug and Larry paved this trail, and we were going out there, and it was kind of one of those things where I'm trying again. I'm in a constant state of trying to get in better and better shape. So I'm like, he's trying to talk me into it. Registration is January 1st at noon, and I was sitting at the table like, I do not want to do this. There's nothing in me that wants to do this, but I'm getting some pressure, so I'm gonna roll with it. And noon comes around, and I go to register, and I don't have an ultra sign up login. So I had to sit there and create my login, do all that. So it took me like 5 minutes or so, and then I registered. And I'm like, well, 5 minutes have passed. There's probably at least 100 people that registered. I'm not going to get in. At least I can say I tried, and I won't get in. So this will be fine. So this will actually work out for me. And then I get the email that I was, selected. I was like, oh crap! Like now it's time to actually, do this. So I started training that spring with Doug for the Mid-State Mile, and I play basketball quite regularly with a group of guys from work. And every Friday morning before work, there's a rec center right by our office, and we play basketball. End of April, I sprained my ankle, and I've sprained my ankle quite a few times in the past, and I've gotten to a point where I can catch that sprain and I can just go, down, and it's not too bad. I can usually tie my shoe pretty tight, get some ice and compression, and be back on it within a week. I heard some pops. It was the worst sprain I've ever had in my life. And that was the last weekend in April. And I had a half marathon that weekend that I signed up with my brother to do. It was his first ever race. He did it because I was pressuring him into getting into it. And I'm like, if I back out of this, he will back out too. And I may never get him to the spot again. So I kind of downplayed how bad the sprain was to my wife, because she would have killed me if she would have known that it was really that bad. But I went down so I sprained it on Friday morning. Sunday morning, I ran the half marathon with my brother. I had my figure eight basketball brace on underneath my running shoe to where it was basically immobilized, and ran 13 miles on it and really messed it up. So it felt fine during the race, but as soon as I took my brace off, like it started folding over my shoe. It was black and blue from the ankle to my toes. And I sent a picture to my buddy, who happens to be my physical therapist. I met him because I went to physical therapy for something else. And I sent him a text, and he's like, yeah, that wasn't a good idea. So I went to see him and got into some physical therapy, but it was pretty bad. And that was, a month and a half before Mid-State. So that really didn't improve. It kind of sidelined me for training during what should have been my peak weeks for Mid-State. So I did what I could. I walked a lot on the treadmill because I wasn't quite as steep as the hill was. Then I go down to Mid-State with my ankle brace on, duct taped around, because the Velcro was like snapping with the incline of the hill because it was so steep. So I had basically a boot on my foot, and it was brutal. It was hot. I think I took my shirt off after the first round, which for me to take my shirt off in a race is, it's got to be pretty hot, or at least a year ago. So I'm like, I don't even care what I look like anymore. I got to get this shirt off. I'm dying. And I lasted 2 hours. So I got 6 miles, just over 6 miles in, and I came in and missed the time cutoff. So I don't know what my goals were, but they definitely were longer than 6. 6 was pretty low for even where I wanted to be. So I was pretty humbled. I remember John he's shaking my hand. He's like, "Did you get what you wanted, what you came for?" And I'm like, "No, not even close." And I was like fighting back tears because I'm like mad. Um, but honestly, that moment right there was really pivotal for me. Um, so I went back after the weekend. Well, in that moment, I had a bit of my own pity party about how bad it
As we
was.
do.
Like, well, my
As we
ankle,
do.
and if I would have just been healthy, I could have done better. And then, 20 minutes later, everybody's coming through again. And instantly, I had, Doug and Kale, they were in my tent with me. And those two specifically were just like pumping my tires and, you know, lifting me up. And I'm like, they're still in it. Like, I should be doing this for them. So I kind of put on the crew hat, which was the first time I've ever crewed. So Doug had someone there crewing him, and I just went to that guy and I'm like, dude, I'll do whatever you need. I'll run to the store, I'll run to the car, I'll run to the tent. Like, use me, because I still had plenty of energy left. I just couldn't hit that 20 minutes. So I stayed all night. I was up all night waiting, building relationships and helping crew the group there, and that's where I really got to spend some time with you, or as you were running through, like I'm seeing how you processed the ups and downs, and I'm kind of taking all these mental notes from all the people that went pretty far into it, and that moment getting out where I thought, this is something, I don't belong here. I tried it. I'm giving, this was a great effort. I'm not coming back, to that kind of switch in my mind where I need more of this. And that sucked. And I don't want it to suck like that anymore, but I can tell that there's something good here and I want to, kind of dive in. So getting home, I was watching, or I started looking through some pictures, and I watched the, um, the podcast and the live stream on the way home. And I caught the glimpse of myself shaking hands with John as he was cutting my wristband off, and it was a side profile. And I was like, buddy, you weren't even close to being in the shape that you thought you were in to go down to Tennessee. Great effort, but what it did for me was it kind of took the lenses off of where I was. All these things that I was training hard, I was eating harder, and I was drinking like crazy. I was not taking care of myself behind the curtain. So like what I'd put on social media, what everybody would see is this guy who's giving an all-out effort to something to better his life, and to I'm going to Warriors Way. I'm leading this group of men, and I'm trying to invest in myself in this new hobby of trail running. All these epic things, but what they weren't seeing was, at work, I'd go in with my home cooked meal, and then somebody would bring in pizza, and I wouldn't just go grab a slice. I would wait an hour till nobody was in the kitchen, and I would go grab like 4 slices. And in 20 seconds, I would have smashed 4 slices of pizza and probably a donut. And I would have gone back to my desk. Like, nobody saw that. So it doesn't really matter. But when I saw that picture of myself shaking John's hand, I'm like, dude, everybody sees it. You're not hiding anything from all these things you think you're hiding. You're not hiding from anyone. And I took it even further than the health. It's like I was living a very unhealthy life with, my walk with God. My drinking was out of control. All these different things that were like vices that I was relying on that I thought nobody else could see. Like in my mind, when I saw that picture, it was clear as day. I'm like, everybody can see it. I'm not hiding it from anybody. What I think I'm doing in secret is out here for the world to see. And what I'm doing is not matching with what I'm saying. And I don't want to be a man that talks one way and lives another way anymore. So I hired a coach and got after it last summer. And I still am not where I want to be, but I'm making constant progress towards that. And yeah, it's been a fun year. And that's kind of what started the trail running side of it.
Yeah, man, and that's why like I like that we're all projects. You're constantly working on it, and you're talking about like we talked about this right before we got on. Where you're at with running and everything else, and like you have the foundation. Like I think that's the point that like your foundation is now you're comfortable with who you are. You have something stable and real, and that's what I respect about you so much as a friend. Like, you're honest with all of us, and most of all, as you just explained, now you're honest with yourself, and that's always a huge turning point. Like you said, you saw that photo, and when I think of, like, I think you saw that as the person you were supposed to be. You were looking at who you were from the lens of the person you were supposed to be, and you're like, that's not it. And I think that
Yeah.
we've all been there, and I've been there too. And in the year before at Midstate, I was drinking too much, and I was doing exactly the things you're talking about. I was preaching one thing, and I wasn't following the things that I was saying. I was telling people this is what you should do, and I'm not even applying the things. Or the I'm doing them behind the curtain that I think nobody can see. And then it's funny how for both of us, Midstate peeled the curtain right back. And John and Becca will tell you this all the time, that like that it will reveal who you actually are. And I think they said it on the podcast I listened to today, I believe, that it'll show who you actually are. Who is actually a strong person with a strong structure. And folks, when we talk about Midstate, I haven't laid this out, but it's a Mid-State Mile. It's a last man standing race in Franklin, Tennessee, an hour from me. It's my first ultra, and it's a 1.1 mile loop. You have to finish in 20 minutes. It has 343 feet of elevation gain and descent, so two massive ups and two massive downs. It hammers your legs. It is very hot. It is very humid. It is unrelenting. And for Tim, I mean, he's talking about Tim did a marathon, and he went out to this and maybe had a bum ankle, but even ran a half marathon on the bum ankle and got out to this course and struggled to get in 6 miles at a 20-minute per mile pace. So I just want to put into perspective for people the difference of what this loop is compared to even a marathon, where Tim finished a full marathon where 6 miles was his highest ever run, and then did 26. And on this course, we're back to 6 miles. So almost full circle there as well. And I just wanted to put into perspective for people how tough this course is. And then, Tim, you came out for Tennessee Mile. And so I'm guessing that one, your fitness change, and then two, the result of Midstate, that's what drove you out there. But, I mean, how did Tennessee Mile go? And then what were the motivating factors to even come out? And Tennessee Mile, folks, is the same loop, but you get to pick a time limit you'd like to be out there: 40 hours, 24 hours, 12 hours, 6 hours. There might be a 3 hour. There's all sorts of options. You get to choose, and you get to move along the loop at whatever pace you would like to. So that's just the same course, but you're not held to the 20-minute standard.
Yeah, I think leaving Mid-State, Doug's already talked to me about Tennessee Mile, and I'm like, yeah, I that sucked, and I'm, as much as I want to change, I'm never going back to that hill. So that's a one and done thing for me. I hate that place, and I'm never going to go back. And then, a couple days later, I'm like, okay, so where's the link for Ultra sign up? And I looked, and I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and sign up for it. I don't even know if my ankle was pretty messed up coming back. I ended up spending, I think 12 weeks or 16 weeks in physical therapy. With my ankle, I couldn't run most of the summer with it. But I signed up. It's not a crazy bad entrance fee. So it's like, if worst comes to worst and I lose, I think it was like $100 or something at the time. Like, I've spent more money on dumber stuff. So if I don't get my money back, whatever. Well, Warriors Way, Doug started recruiting for Tennessee Mile. And so, like, people would come to their first weekend at Warriors Way, and Doug's like, "Hey, let me tell you about this race that I signed you up for. It's in Tennessee, and it's in December. We're all going. So pack your bags, get the days off work." And it got to a point where I'm like, "Doug, you can't say this to every first timer. Like, let them open the door for you, but like, you're scaring people away." So before long, we had 5 or 6 guys from Michigan that were signed up to do this, and it started to become like this, build some momentum. So coming back from Midstate, I called Darren Jansen, and I was like, I've talked to him probably for 2 years prior to Midstate, and we talked about coaching. It was never the right time. And I sent him the picture of John and I, And he just said, "Yeah, man, let's talk." And so we got on the phone, and I just like, "Dude, I'm done. I'm done living in secret. I'm done hiding what's keeping me here. I want to change." So, um, I knew what to do to make the changes. I know what to eat. I know what to do for exercise to make those changes. But there was something that was stopping it from happening. So I needed somebody in my corner that was holding me accountable, checking in on me, several times a week, and holding me to the standard that I'm trying to hold myself to, while I tried to work some of this stuff out mentally on what were some of my roadblocks. So I started working with him right away, and it was really like, um, you know, I want to run, and I couldn't. So Darren's like, "Yeah, we're not focusing on running right now. I know you have a goal in December to do 24 hours. We're going to worry about that later. Like right now, you need to get better, get healthy." So I was in physical therapy. We were doing some workouts, and things weren't really, they were moving a little bit. They weren't moving quite as fast as I wanted them to. And I've just learned that I lose weight really hard. So like I was doing all the right things. It just, needle wasn't moving. And then I think it was September was officially time where we started training for the Tennessee Mile. And I'm thinking I'm going to have to be running hours and hours a day. And Darren's like, "We're not worried about miles at all. We're just hitting elevation." So he gave me an elevation goal to hit every week. He's like, "You can do this in one run. You can do this in 10 runs. I don't care how many runs it takes you, but here's your elevation goal for the week. Split it up any way you want." And I would go to the hill in the woods, or I'd get on the treadmill, and I would go as fast as I could. But most of the time at that level of incline, you're power hiking and you're walking. You're not sprinting up those hills. And my fat just started to melt off. So then I started getting some like confidence, like what could I do in 24 hours? Really, I just wanted to go for 24 hours. I had no goal. But then I set the goal of doing 50 miles in 24 hours, which, I was doing the math and I'm like, I think I can hit this. It's going to take my very best effort. So, I put in a really solid training block, stayed healthy, and went down for the Tennessee Mile with really just the mindset of I'm going to, no matter what, my A goal was to move for 24 hours. I'm not going to quit before. I'm not going to sit down at 18 and say that was good enough. So, that was honestly encouraged by Darren, because he's like, if you make 50 miles your A goal and you hit 50 in 20 hours, are you going to quit because you hit your goal? Like, I would make 24 hours your A goal, 50 miles your B goal. I was like, hey, I can do that. So I hit my B goal of 50 miles, and I was actually probably an hour before I hit the 50 miles, I'm starting to look, I'm like, man, if I turn this up, I might be able to get 60. And so I started really pushing it for those last several hours. And it doesn't have the same atmosphere and the pressure of the 20-minute time that the mid-state mile does. But I started, manufacturing some pressure on overachieving on my goal. And then John, you're coming in and he's like, "You got an hour left. That's, 3 more laps at least. Come on, you're going to get." I'm like, "Yeah, John, I got 3 more laps." He was like, "No, you got 4 laps." And so he was like encouraging me to go further and further and
Mm-hmm.
further. And those last several laps before the 24-hour, buzzer went off were some of my fastest laps of the whole day. And so I ended up doing, I think 55 miles in the 24 hours, which, passed my goal. I felt great. I got revenge on the hill. But again, it just left me with, okay, that was awesome. I took a minute to be thankful that I stayed healthy that whole time and injury free. But then it was instantly like, okay, what's next? Like, if, I just did over a 50K. So, 100Ks next, 100 miler next, 40 hours next year. Like, what's the next goal? So I started talking to Darren and set some really good goals for this year. So halfway through those as of now.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I just loved seeing you out there, and you were a transformed person, not just internally, but externally. Like, you looked different, you looked better, you looked healthy, and It's so amazing to see people like make that change, and that's what's so great sometimes about not having people there like all the time is I see you, you know, twice a year, but to see such a change in 6 months. And then what I love about that is like everybody else can tell a story that's like yours. You know what I mean? It's like, look at this person, because so many people don't believe they can make the change. Like what you're saying, it's like I knew what I had to do. I can't do it. Like, and people legitimately believe they can't do it. And you used legitimate resources to make your goals happen. And I think a lot that takes a lot of vulnerability, because most men, most of us, like we don't want to admit that we can't do something on our own. And that is not
Yeah.
just running or fitness or anything. It's anything. It's like I won't even tell anybody that I had to, you know, use a YouTube video to hang a cabinet or something like that. I won't tell anybody. It's like I hung that cabinet, you know, and that's just how we're wired. And
Well, that was a huge
so I
thing.
mean, what what's that?
That was a huge thing I had to unpack through all of this is, you know, part of my story, I won't get crazy into it, but the way I was raised, it's kind of preconditioned me to I really don't accept help well. Not because I don't want it or I'm mad at the people for offering it, but I just don't accept help well. So I don't want people to see my flaws because I don't know if I'm afraid of they might think that I'm inadequate or I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough. So like you, yeah, I'll YouTube the heck out of something. I'm gonna fix my car myself before I take it and ask my neighbor who's got every tool imaginable to help me look at my car. Uh, my wife will be all the time like, well, just ask this person for help. I'm like, no, I got it. And inside I'm like, man, why am I so proud that I can't just go ask for help? And so through this year, asking Darren for help was like a huge move for me. And I think a lot of us guys struggle with that. Like we want to appear like we have it all together and we can do it all ourselves. But some things you need help with, and that's okay. And in fact, it's a form of strength recognizing where you need help and making the right decision to go get it. Because if I wouldn't ask for help, I'm probably sitting here again at this time this year in the same place, spinning my tires, getting frustrated.
Yeah, and I agree completely. And I want to segue this completely. Was this a motivating factor for you to start what Warriors Way is? And then I'd love to get a more detailed explanation of the goals of Warriors Way. And I just want, I mean, from hearing the story, it sounds like it's a direct translation. Like I was a man who needed help that couldn't, you know, bring myself to ask. And then when I finally did, you saw tangible results. And then you created a group that now helps others find those results, which now also has another chapter in Colorado. So you have two chapters of something that you built that, like I said, it sounds like was you know what I mean? And now you've made it into its own program and organization. So I just would love to hear more about it.
Yeah, Warrior's Way has kind of been an evolving concept. So I was part of this men's, it's like spiritual leadership and mentorship group. It's called Seek Well, and I could share more information with you about that another time. But it's you meet as a group 4 times throughout the year at an offsite location, just about an hour west of where I live now, and it's a time. Seek Well is about seeking Jesus well. So it's about men and women going there for a weekend, completely disconnecting, and we go through some like leadership type stuff where we're given some content, all in the with the purpose of helping us slow down and listen to God. So how do we get back into the Word and really let it speak to us the way that it's intended to? So I went through this with a group of guys, and we grew really close. A year or so after I was out, we had an alumni getaway in Colorado. So a group of us went out to Estes Park and did some backpacking. And it was the same type of thing. We'd do a 13 or 14-mile hike, but in there we'd stop 7 miles in and have like a little leadership session. So somebody would share like this devotion with us about carrying baggage and then give us a practical application. And then we'd go off and have 30 minutes, just kind of get by ourselves, journal a little bit, write down what we feel like God's putting on our heart. And one of the questions they had was, what is God telling you to do that you're not doing right now? And this concept of having a men's fitness group at our church had been on my mind. And I don't know why it came up in that moment, but I wrote it down, and then they asked us to share it, and I told them about it. And they're like, okay, well, when are you starting it? And I'm like, well, maybe this fall. And they're like, no, put a date on it. Write the date down in your book right now. Like, put action behind it. If you say maybe that sometime this fall is going to turn into sometime this spring, and then it's never going to start. So put a date. And so I just threw a date down there. And then I came home and I'm like, Doug, we're starting it. This is the date. We got to do it. But the concept was, I had Doug as a friend where I started getting around running more. And I had some other friends that were running, and we're challenging ourselves in these physical ways. We're talking about God the whole time we're running together. And so we're challenging ourselves spiritually and stuff too. And I'm like, man, there's just not enough of this. And everybody that I want to give this to isn't going to come out on a trail for a 16-mile run on a Saturday afternoon. Like, that's not practical for everybody to do. So how do we make this more accessible? And there's a couple different groups that are somewhat like ours that I started to research and find out about. But with it being a part of our church, I needed it to be something that was started in our church. Like, our church wasn't going to let another outside organization come in, and I wouldn't get support from them for that. So we started it as a men's group in our church. Really, I was sitting in church just looking around at the men in church, and the majority of them, whether they're solid Christian men or they're there because their wife or kids dragged them there, the majority of them are out of the auditorium and in their car within a minute from the time that the church is dismissed. Like, they're not standing around hanging out with their buddies. They're for sure not going to the first visit desk or the next steps desk to scan a code, to go onto a website, to scroll through all the different groups that could be there and find something that's just going to, like, the majority of guys just aren't going to do that. And I'm looking and I'm like, these are the men that I want to help, are the guys who are just going through autopilot. They're going to church on Sunday. They're going home. They're going to Costco. They're watching football. They're rolling their eyes when it's time to go to bed because they know they're going to go to a job they hate tomorrow, and they're going to do it all over again for a week. And then Saturday's going to come. They're going to play golf, or they're going to watch football. They're going to drink too much. They're going to go to church on Sunday to say that they did it. And it's just going to be that repeat over and over again. Like, we the men in our communities, if we want our communities to change, it's got to start with us. And so that's where the burden came from. And, I think the whole aspect of starting it before I really had it perfected was important, because if I would have waited till I felt like I should start it to where I was, worthy enough to, or good enough, like people should listen to me, or I have the influence, I would have always doubted myself and it never would have happened. Instead, it's like, I market this with our guys, like, I am leading it because somebody's got to take attendance every week, and somebody has to tell the pastor of the church, if we want to have a potluck, I'm going to need to ask them for some money to help support the potluck. Or if I want to have a guest up here, I'm going to need to ask them if they can help bring a guest up. Somebody's got to be the head of it. But this is ran by us. So if one of the guys comes to me and they want to do, hey, I want to lead the workout this week. Awesome. It's not mine. It's ours. So go ahead and lead the workout. Or I want to lead the devotion. By all means, it's up to yours. So yeah, when Brian asked me about starting one in Colorado, he's like, would you let me start a chapter of this out here? I was like, dude, it's not mine to give you. Like, if God's putting it on your heart that you need to start something, like, you better start it quick, because, God puts those burdens on our hearts for a reason. So I'm flattered. Yeah, let's make it happen. And I'm just flattered to be a part of it. And, but it's the group that make it something so much special. And, there's guys that come and this might be the only workout they do. This might be the only exercising they do for the week. And that's great, because everything we do is modifiable to wherever you are, whatever fitness level you're at. Some of the guys come and it's not honestly that great of a workout for them. They're running 100-milers on a weekend like Doug, but what's happening is the relationships that are forming during that just time of, shared hardship. And it's manufactured hardship. Like we are creating it on our own. But working out when it's raining or snowing or it's icy out or your hands are cold because it's so cold, like that's not fun to do. We sit at coffee afterwards and we laugh about how dumb it was, but it's like none of us are getting up on Saturday morning because of how much we like that. We're getting up on Saturday morning, we're showing up together because those relationships that form when the real trials and the real struggles come that are not manufactured, they're real life problems. We're standing shoulder to shoulder with other men who are like, no, I can go through that with you. And there's just walls that break down when men do hard things together. Like I've been a part of like wood chopping weekends, with a group of guys for the church, and you make some friends out there with, saws and axes, and they might be your friends for the rest of your life, but it's because you have a shared struggle. And I honestly think that's what's so special about Midstate and the Tennessee Mile is, and a lot of these backyard formats, right? Is you get to share struggles with each other for so long that the friendships you form and the bonds you form in that figure eight loop are some of the most special friendships and bonds that you might ever have. But it's because it's in that shared suffering that you guys got to do that in.
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't agree more, and I think what you're doing is helping more people. The group you guys brought down to Tennessee Mile was absolutely incredible. And these people now, they follow me, they follow you, they follow the race, like they're involved in the community. And it's like the branches are continuing to just expand, and yeah, what you're saying about, man, the physical struggles that then lead to like emotional connections, and I don't know why that works so well, but it's in anything I've ever done. When I wrestled in high school, all of the people that worked, there's a group of us that like were wanting to be better, and so when everybody else got water, we kept drilling. We were closer than everybody else. When I was in the army and you had people that wanted to go to specialty schools, only some of us wanted to do that. Those groups were tighter. And that's like the same thing what you're talking about. You're taking people out of, the bigger society, putting them into small groups, adding some chosen suffering is what I like to call it. And then it aids in the unchosen suffering, which is what you're talking about, like the external factors of life that come at you that you have no control of, deaths in families and, losing a house or a fire or things like that, and I know John, like he hates the word suffering apparently lately, but it's the only way I can really like say. But yeah, the chosen suffering is what makes the unchosen sufferings easier, and I think that's why we all continue to choose suffering or choose adversities on purpose, like the manufactured ones. It's because somehow we know that when the unchosen sufferings come, they've gotten way easier because I kept doing these things, manufacturing suffering for myself. It's like you're putting yourself through constant test trials, just waiting for, like you said, the real trial to happen. And then also
Yeah.
creating a community that can help, And man, I don't know. I just like what you're doing, dude. Like, and that's the thing. And I want to start my own thing. And it's probably one of, like you said, like what's weighing on you. And I think I told you probably like 6 months ago that I was going to look into starting it, and I haven't. I started this. I don't know what this is yet, but and it's just getting out there and doing what what God has on your heart, and I talk about God a lot to people, and in the sauna a lot. I don't know why that's such a place, but it's so many people in there I've spoken that I don't even know their names, and the other day I wanted to ask you this question because it was a hard question for me to answer, but somebody asked me, he's like yeah, like I shared my testimony essentially, and he's like, I pray all the time, and I try to read scripture, and you're talking about feeling the presence of God. I don't think I've ever felt that. How do I find that? And I was like, I don't like, I was struggling to find words of how to explain to him, like, because it sounds like he was doing the right things, and I know that I struggled to find the answer. And I'm just wondering, one, how you find God's presence, and then two, the advice that you would give somebody in finding God on their own?
That's a really, really good question.
Yeah, it
Um,
struck me so hard in there, dude.
I think I have a really hard time, or I would say I had a really hard time finding God's presence in the moment. It's easy for us to look back at, trials or difficult times in our life and see that's where God was, right? I've gone through some crazy things in my past, and I'm able to look back and be like, yeah, God was here, 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 and here. Like it's so obvious now. Like hindsight's 2020. I'm looking at it. The only way I made it from here to here, from here to here, is because of God's presence in my life. Um, I was going through a really, really difficult time in my life, and I was talking with a pastor just about what am I doing? How do I even continue to go on right now with like my whole world felt like was falling apart. And he said, Tim, every trial is an opportunity to grow closer to God. Don't make it about getting out of the trial. Make it about getting closer to God. Because the trial will come, the trial will end, but if you don't use that time to get closer to God, you've wasted that trial. So that trial, it's like, you know, it's like failing at mid state and then not changing the way I was behaving.
They're never
Like
signing up again.
I wasted a trial. Um, so I really spent time going through whenever I'm going through a really, really difficult, bad time, I try to focus on my scriptures with God's promises. And when I'm feeling down, I speak those promises. And sometimes, there's actually a lot of studies about it, and it's kind of like that whole red car theory. When if I'm going out right now and I'm looking at a new red truck, and I buy that new red truck, I'm going to drive off the lot and then I'm going to drive home and I'm going to see all these red trucks everywhere. It's not because there's more red trucks on the road, but it's because that's what my mind is thinking about. And so, like, when you're going through those trials, if you're focused on God's promises and you're focused on the goodness of God, and that's all you're focusing on, and you're overwhelming yourself with scripture after scripture after scripture, you're spending time talking with God, not begging Him to fix your problem, but thanking Him for giving you the problem, because those problems are opportunities to grow. So when you can flip that way of thinking, it's difficult. I'm not saying that it's not hard, but when you can approach things that way, you start to see the goodness of God. You start to see the presence of God, because that's what you're focused on. It doesn't mean that God just automatically shows up in those times. I do believe He can, but I believe God's with us. The presence of God, if you're a believer in Christ, the presence of God lives in us. So it's with us all the time. So it's like, if I'm not feeling the presence of God, it's probably because I'm not focused on trying to find the presence of God. And if I can dive into scripture and I can surround myself with the truths and the promises that God tells me in scripture, and I can focus on that, I'm way more likely to see that happening every day. Whereas if I'm only focusing on my problem and I'm begging God, there was somebody I was listening to. He was talking about the way he prayed, and he was talking about, God, please keep me from anger. Please, help me not get sick. Please, and he was asking God for all these things that were really negative things. He's just asking for that not to happen. And he was actually said he was talking to his therapist, and his therapist was like, "Why are you praying that way?" He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Everything you're asking is for this not to happen to you, or for these bad things not to be a part of your life. Instead, thank God when He gives you patience. Thank God that He gives you health, instead of begging God that He's not going to make you that you don't get sick." We just went through these pandemics, and there's all kinds of stuff all over the place. Instead of freaking out and begging God to not get COVID, I'm going to thank God that I'm healthy. God, thank you that I'm healthy and I can go run. There's people right now that can't go run because their lungs are shot. Like, I'm thankful for my health. And it's like, when you focus on the problem, you're going to see more of the problem. When you're focused on God's promises and His presence, you're going to see Him more. It doesn't mean that the problems aren't there. Those problems could still be there. But when you're focused on God's promises, that's where your attention's at. You're not focused so much on the problems. And before you know it, that trial will subside. every trial is going to come and it's going to go. The worst trial as Christians that we can face is that we die and then we don't have problems anymore. So
Well, the
there,
best thing
the
happens,
problem's
right?
either going
Yeah.
to go or you're going to go away from the problem. But either way, that problem will pass eventually, whether we focus on it more or not. I'm not saying just be oblivious and don't do anything. There's obviously steps that need to be taken, but when you focus on God, it's much easier to see His promises. That's what my advice would be.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I wish that I had that for him. I told him stop looking and start doing works, And I said it sounds like you're probably praying a little bit for yourself instead of being grateful for what God's given you already. And
Yeah.
no matter how minuscule that looks. So I mean, I didn't have, but I just knew that at one point when I was a baby Christian, I was a Christian to start out with to reap the benefits for myself. And I say that with full embarrassment and shame right now. But now I pray for what I've already gotten because I don't even think I deserve any of it. And
Yeah.
that's such a different place to be in. But I know that now there's times that I just am overcome with emotion for no reason at all. No reason. I'm not even praying. I'm not even thinking about God or anything. And I will just be overwhelmed with gratefulness to be alive. And I never felt that before I was a Christian. So, and I told him that as well. It's like, there's like, how do I prove that God's real? Because that was another question he had, or maybe somebody else did. And it's like, well, I can't give you what I felt, but I'll tell you that this stuff didn't happen to me before I believed. And now it does. So to me, that's proof, legitimate proof. I can't show you a picture, but I can tell you what's happened. And
Hmm.
but that all flipped when I stopped caring. I guess I wouldn't say caring about myself, but putting God first, and Dylan was a little bit farther back on the priority list.
Yeah.
I think that one thing with that too is just, my purpose is working for God, and I think yours is as well. And I'm just another question that people ask me. A lot of people don't have purpose. They don't have one at all. Like I think most people. I'd hate to throw a number at it, but it's not good in the way of having purpose. And I feel lucky enough to say that I think my purpose is in faith, fitness, and sobriety, and pushing my message through those things and sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ, if I was to put it in a sentence. So I'm just wondering, Tim, what do you think your purpose is? And if you were to give advice to somebody on how to find theirs.
Yeah. Similar to yours, I have, my pillars are my faith, my family, and my fitness. Um, my faith, I'd be nothing without it. I wouldn't have my family without my faith. Um, and my fitness is only there to aid in me becoming better for my family and for God. For a long time, and it's huge in churches. It's like fitness is kind of this taboo thing, and the Bible talks a lot about us being healthy. So I believe we've got one body. God, this is the only thing that we can't just go and upgrade. And well, yet I guess AI is coming a long way, but currently we can't just go and get a new one. God gave us this, and we're supposed to be good stewards of what God's given us. Um, but my purpose for being active and being healthy is because I want to grow old with my wife. I want to be wrestling and running and playing with my kids and my grandkids one day. And if I don't take care of myself now, that'll never happen. And I believe God's called us to be leaders in our families and to set that example. So those are my pillars. That's what's really important to me, and that's why it's important to me. If something happened where I got sick or injured or whatever, I had was in an accident and I couldn't run anymore. I wouldn't want my identity tied to that, right? So my social media a while ago was very much identity driven by being into fitness and being into running, and I've tried to use that as an avenue, more recently to share Jesus. Like when I'm making a post, It's no longer just whatever Tim wants to post. It's like, is this post going to point people to or draw people away from Christ? Is this comment that I'm making going to draw people to or pull people away from the Christ? Is this repost? Whatever it is, when it comes to social media, if it's going to pull people away from the Christ, and that's what social media is going to do, then I shouldn't be on it. And so I've had to take a really big look at that. But my identity is 100% found in Jesus, in my faith, and then in being a husband and a father to my kids. I got two right now and one on the way this fall. So it's going to be a full house.
Yeah, that's amazing. Amazing, Tim. Well, let's finish up with, this is the Made New project. And one of the big things I like to speak about is becoming made new. My journey started about 3 years ago, and I know that I have multiple definitive points where I think that things change in my life, and that's why we're projects and we're continuing to be worked on. But I think that everybody has a point where they felt made new. And if you were to pick one, could you just share with us, please?
Yeah. Yeah, I was born. I'm not going to go through the whole story because it's a long one, but I was basically born in church. My grandpa is a Baptist pastor. I was born on Sunday. I was probably in the nursery at church Sunday night, because I would have gotten in trouble if I would have missed a service. So Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, I grew up in church. I went to a Christian school. I heard all the stories. I accepted Jesus as my Savior at a very young age. I think I was like 9 years old. So I wasn't rescued, well, from a terrible life at that moment when Christ, saved me and I accepted Him in my heart. But I was also a product of a divorced home. Um, I was there's a lot of stuff that happened growing up to where I was going off a completely different route. Even though I was still going to a Christian school, my grandpa was still the pastor. It's not that I didn't want to have anything to do with church. I trusted in God, I believed in God, but it was one of those things where it was my security card to get into heaven. And that was about it. So the Bible says you can't lose your salvation. I believe that. So I've done it. I'm good. I've checked the box. I got my ticket. I'm going to go party over here and I'll get back in line later. And I pulled a hard 180 when I was about 19 and decided to quit the life I was living and go to Bible college. And those that knew my uncle, he was the pastor at that time. My grandpa had retired, and my uncle literally called me. I was like, "Do I need to come talk to you because this is wild what you're getting ready to do?" And I'm like, "No, I've made my decision. I'm going to do it." So I spent 4 years in a Bible college going for elementary education. I was going to be a teacher, and didn't end up going that route. Ended up getting into a job secularly where I wanted to give my time and my money back to a church. And if I was like, if I'm going to be a part of a ministry, I want to donate my time and money. I don't want to take it. So, not that we need those people. I just didn't want to do it. So I was married at the time, and my wife and I were helping serve at a church. And long story, but we ended up getting separated and eventually divorced. In that time, I thought, this is it. I had my chance at living a life that God would be pleased of and proud of, and I've blown it. So honestly, it was nothing on either one of our parts that was like this huge catastrophic thing. It was just, my wife, we didn't want to be married anymore. And I fought for it for a long time, and it just didn't work out. So I was living like my new life, and it was in Chicago at 25, 26 years old, and it was fun. And I had some friends out there. They're great friends, but I was doing a lot of things I shouldn't be doing, and had a couple, really close calls with alcohol throughout that time that really woke me up. And I ended up moving back to Michigan and got back involved in church in a really, for the first time, healthy manner. It wasn't because family wanted me there. It wasn't because I felt this obligation to serve or be a part of a ministry. It was just I wanted to go sit in church and really cry. When the worship songs came on, it broke my heart, that God's grace is what it is, and that I have this opportunity to be redeemed. Um, and that was in 2016. So about 10 years ago, I moved back to Michigan, sitting in the back row of a church. Nobody knew who I was. I didn't want to be known. I didn't want the community. I didn't want to be on the worship team. I didn't want to be leading the youth group. I wanted to just be sit there. I just wanted to sit in church and kind of feel for the first time. And God told me, "Hey, your story's not over." And a lot happened through that time where God really made Himself known to me. An overwhelming time of peace came around that time, and it's crazy. Like as soon as I stopped trying to make my life, what I thought God would be proud of, and I just let Him work, everything just started falling into place. Um, like I met my now wife, and there's a crazy story there, but it's, as we look back, it's only by God that we end up at the same place at the same time, you know, in this relationship. And I've got a good job. I've got a amazing wife. I have, we've started our family a few years ago, so I have a 5-year-old daughter now. Well, she'll be 5 in a month. My son will be 2 next month, and we have a new baby coming in October. We don't know what it is yet, so we're gonna roll the dice and maybe not find out. We'll see, but I would attribute it back to that time in 2016, just being in church, not trying to make it more than it needed to be. It was just about, hey, my heart is raw, it's open, and God, I need you, and just opening myself up to that.
Yeah, that full surrender, where like what you're saying is like I want to be made, I want to be something different than I was. And I mean, I remember like I don't know what that is, and I think we can both look at ourselves, and maybe yours is 11 years ago and mine's 4 years ago, and it would never believe this person to have ever become. And this is where like my I get emotional thinking about how I even got here, because it makes no sense to who I was, and that person lived for like a really long time doing the same thing a lot and the same bad things over and over and over again, and would never believe, that this person could ever exist. And I think you feel the same thing, and it's so, gosh, like you said, God's grace. And when Doug asked that question the other day, and then the the answer that came out was like purely godly, and that's like how we feel now, and how lucky we are that we don't even have to think sometimes anymore or act. Like, just, Lord, I need you on this one, and every single time He provides. And I don't know what that is. I don't know why we deserve it, but it keeps happening, And I'm grateful for friends like you, Tim, and Doug, and the community that you're creating, the small, group chat that we have on Instagram, where we share Bible verses and stories and uplift each other, and talk a little bit of man crap as men do, and it's just stuff like that. It's just all God given, And man, I just appreciate your time and your friendship. You are coming down in a few weeks, right?
Uh, I'm not racing.
Well, I know that.
If I
Yeah.
if I come down, it's going to be a last minute thing to come help crew you guys. Uh, so I chose one. I had to choose one this year, and I chose to do the 40-hour race in December. That was before my wife got pregnant, so she's due in
Yeah.
mid October, and we've tried to kind of put some things back and forth. It's the weekend of my son's birthday, so it makes things a little complicated. I did try to throw in a family vacation down to like Nashville, where I could just scoot away for the weekend, but I'm trying to be cognizant and aware of what the family's got going on. So if it works out, I'll drive down, but um, either way, I'm going to be really holding down the live stream. If not, I'll be glued to it and talking, on it. I've got a lot of FOMO. That's for sure. It's going to be an epic weekend. Um, all the guys that you talked about in our group chat, everyone's going down, and they're guys that I only get to see once or twice a year. So it's there's definitely that draw to be down there just to support you guys. I do want to run it, but more than running it, I want to be down there to be just a part of the environment. I want to crew people that like I fell in love with crewing down there. Just jumping into Doug and Kale's tent to just be there, be the runner, be the person that is keeping spirits high when people come in. So I'm really bummed if I don't make it that I won't be able to do that this year. But I'll be shouting it out on the live stream. So hopefully they'll share some of those comments.
Yeah, yeah. Last minute, do you have a top three? I don't want you to have to pick one name, but let's go with a top three for mid-state this year. If you were to pick, three people you think the top three to win it. If you had to put money down, three names, who you got?
I I think it's silly to. I mean, you obviously can't sleep on Mark Dowdle. Um, he's got the pedigree from past races that would make sense for him to be in the top three. Um, like you said, there's been very few races out there that have the elevation that this race has. Aaron Dana has been there and done it. He has what it takes to go the distance on that course. So it'd be silly to leave him out of there. And uh, I haven't heard or really paid attention to. I guess I have it on Strava, but I don't Strava stalk that much. But Brian Baker, I think, is a dark horse where I think he's coming after this thing. He's not coming back to Tennessee from Colorado so that he can take, home 10th place. I think he's coming back with a goal in his mind. He did, I think it was 103 miles in the 40 hours at the Tennessee Mile in December. And, I think that was building up. So those would be my top three if I had to put some money down. But there's a lot of people that I don't know that go there. If there's one thing I've learned just from watching, and I've watched the race for several years, even though last year was the first time I came, just because of knowing Doug. There's one thing I've seen from the last several years is this hill doesn't care what your name is. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what you've done in the past. It cares what you are going to do on that day over and over again. So the mindset you had in the past that was strong enough to get you in the past, has it grown? Has it not? So I'm excited to watch it. I think the people that I'm around that see me glued to these things on a weekend, like the BPN Ultra and some of these the Cocodona, I have it on all the time, and they're like, you're literally like, not only are you not running, which is a boring thing to a lot of people, but you're watching people run. Like,
Yeah.
how insane are you? I'm like, yeah, you just you haven't quite got it yet. But if you got what is going on right now, you'd be excited too. So that's what I love about Midstate is you get so many checkpoints to see. I'm going to see, hopefully see you hitting a few grand slams or a few tee shots at some of those cameras.
It's likely. It's likely. Yeah, I'm going out to have fun. I don't know what shape my body's in. I really just have no idea if we can withstand. Um, I don't know what I want it to do. But
Yeah,
going out for
it
a
could be
full
one of those
effort.
things where you go out and really surprise yourself, and you go way way stronger than you think. 'Cause our bodies are strong, and you've done a lot, my friend.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited for it. There's just a ton of names, and I love that. It means that the race could go really, really far, because of how many. I mean, you named three great people, and there's probably seven or eight more that I could put into a top three. You have Luke, who's taken second multiple years. You have Harvey Lewis. You've got Matt Johnson. You've got Kale. You've got myself. I mean, like I said, I just know you got Cody Eubanks, who's taken third out there before. It is a doghouse this year. Usually there's like, okay, like it's pretty clear who could do pretty well, and there's going to be some surprises. This year it's like there's a lot of people that could go really far out here, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be, oh, that Stormy Hill too. He's like a super good backyard runner. He's finished Cocodona, so he should have something to say out there. I mean, there's just so many people. It's gonna be really exciting. It's gonna be a crazy year. But if my body doesn't hold up, you'll know because I'll be commentating the live stream. So that's my backup plan is like if I'm out, who knows? I mean, maybe I do 100 miles and I still get out and just hop right over to the desk, and start ripping commentary.
Start a podcast.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
if you do get over there, we have now figured out how to do Riverside dual streaming. So if you do get over there, just hit me up and I'll jump on and we'll do a segment.
yeah. That'd be fun. I want to do something beforehand. I just don't know. I know I said it in our chat. I don't know. I was talking to my buddy Graz yesterday, and I was like, I know I could do it, and Becca would probably let me use their Wi-Fi, bring all my stuff down, and we could have some fun. But then I was thinking that it's really going to take a lot of my energy and time away from what I should be focusing on. And it's like, is what's important to me? So I have to make that decision,
Yeah.
in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Just the mental capacity it would take to try to set everything up, have the conversations, like they're exhausting. So I'll be
Yeah, well,
praying
this
for you,
one's
man.
been great, dude. This one's been great. This one's been easy, Tim. I mean, you came on last minute, dude. Literally, I asked in my chat today, folks. I'm like, anybody, can anybody pop on and like, let's do a podcast this week? And Tim was the first one. And so, dude, glad to talk to you. Thank you for sharing everything you shared. I think you've truly been made new, and I love to see your journey. I hope I get to see you in June, if not December, unless we can plan something about me coming up there. I know you want me to come up there, and I want to come up there and see all you guys and hang out with the Warriors Way folks. So one way or another, we'll see each other
Yeah,
soon, man.
yeah, we'll make it happen. Thanks again, Dylan. I appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, once again, guys, this is Tim Martin. Tim runs on Instagram, and the Warriors Way podcast on Spotify and Instagram as well. Anything else, Tim, that you any handles or anything you need to throw down?
No, that's it. They can find me there, and I'm always open to meeting new people and chatting. So throw me a message, and I'd love to have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Once again, folks, thanks for tuning in to the Made New Project. Our special guest today, Tim Martin. It's been an absolute pleasure. And this should release, I don't know, probably Thursday. So you guys will be listening to this on Thursday. Once again, thank you. Just get the shares out there. I guess like, follow, subscribe. This is the first time I've said that. I don't really care if you like, follow, subscribe, folks. If you don't like this stuff, then don't do any of those things. Really don't. We got to keep it real out here. But once again, thank you. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate you, folks. This is the Made New Project. I'm Dylan Ledbetter. Out.